What's up guys, it's Dono. In this video, we're gonna be talking about how to use rhymes well. So if you've been rapping, you probably understand rhymes. Some of you have gone on to more complex types of rhymes like multi-syllable rhymes, but a common problem I see is people using those rhymes in ways that don't really make a whole lot of sense. Now I understand that not everyone is trying to craft a perfect message and make everything super like tight and concise. Some people just like the way the language sounds. However, a lot of you are making, these lines that you think are really complex and awesome, but when people listen to them, they don't really understand what it's about. So let's get into that a little bit more. You guys have probably all heard a verse where at first you were kind of like, oh wow, that sounds really pretty cool. And then as you thought about what the actual words were, you were like, wait a minute, what is he even saying? Like, what does it even mean? Why would you even say that? It doesn't make any sense at all. So this is the kind of thing that I want you to pay attention to. I know it happens to me a lot. So what'll happen a lot of times is I'll start writing a verse with a certain scheme and I'll get stuck up in the scheme. And before I know it, I've written a verse that sounds something like this. I'm on top, sitting where the pinnacle is. You get cut down, I'm not talking minimalist. Start missing the mix of all your integral bits and switch the tone till it hits a pivotal pitch. Some of you might have heard that and enjoyed it and thought it sounded really nice. But once we start breaking it down, you're gonna realize there's a bunch of points in there that don't make a whole lot of sense. So, I mean, the first two lines, there's kind of maybe this braggadocio theme, but then after that, it falls apart really fast. So for example, missing the mix of your integral bits, like what does that mean? It sounds nice, but I don't know what that sentence means. It means like maybe some vague reference to cutting somebody up or something. Like it just isn't clear what that means. And then we get into the next line, it talks about tone and hitting a pivotal pitch. I don't know the difference between a pivotal and non-pivotal pitch. Like that, again, that doesn't really mean anything. It rhymes, but it just doesn't have any substance. Now, I'm not saying every single line that you write has to be perfect. It has to communicate a perfect meaning and yada, yada, yada. But what I'm getting a little bit tired of hearing is rappers who will write these lines that don't make any sense. And then they'll be like, no, you don't understand. Like it has this really deep lyrical meaning that's really complex and hard to unpack. Here's the deal. If no one understands what you're saying, if it doesn't make any sense, then it doesn't make any sense. Like just because you think it has meaning, it's not communicated, right? You only have your verse or your song or whatever else to get your message across. So when the listener is hearing it, they're only hearing what you say. They're not hearing all these deep, complex thoughts that you have built up behind all these rhymes. Adding on to that, a lot of times it's just really not that hard to make minor edits to make the message a lot more clear. This is just a circumstance where sometimes your rhymes overwhelm your message. That's mainly what I'm cautioning. Again, if you want to just write a lot of rhymes and don't really, care that much about what meaning is coming across, that's great. That's totally a stylistic choice. I just want you to be aware of what you're doing. Going along the same note in using rhymes well, another thing that tends to happen is to rhyme, we'll make up some kind of awkward phrases. So technically the actual meaning is still right, but the language itself sounds really weird. So let's go back to integral bits. That's a really weird phrasing that you would never hear anywhere else. Now, technically, it means something, right? Like integral bits, it's like the, parts that you need, but just the way that it's worded is really awkward. Now, I'm a big fan of using, a more broad vocabulary and kind of stretching some of the boundaries and stuff, but again, just when you're writing this stuff, you want to make sure that it communicates what you're saying. Like the language, integral bits sounds so awkward and strange that it might really throw people off, even if they sit and think about it for a minute. You want something that's smooth and easy to process if you want your listeners to be able to take the message away in one go. Here's another example that I pulled from one of the lines that I wrote forever ago. Want to bust this head till it cracks, my trust is dead, nil for wax. See, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. Bust his head until it cracks is the same as like, I'm gonna crush that can until it's smashed. You know what I mean? Like, it's just redundant and awkward phrasing. Another part of that, nil for wax, I legitimately have no idea what I was even trying to communicate with that. Now, I'm sure at the time I was like, oh, it has this really complex, deep meaning, but that's the thing. Like, the context doesn't come with it. You only communicate whatever your lines actually say. So now this line just means gibberish. All in all, basically what I'm trying to get at is don't let rhyme beat out the message that you're trying to get across. If you want to just rhyme to rhyme and like say some stuff because it sounds cool, that's awesome. Just be aware of what you're actually saying, especially if you're trying to get a message across. I'm not going to say you have to do things a specific way. I'm just saying that, think about this stuff. That's all I've got for this video. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, throw them down in the box below. Beyond that, I've got a website that you can check out, rapbetter.com, has more free resources for you, and keep practicing. See ya. Don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up to date on the videos, and if you have any questions, comments, or topics you want me to cover, leave them down in the box below and I'll get to them as soon as possible. See you next time.